In the last video, we upgraded our program to use browser.element and we added some subscriptions. Specifically, we made a timer and it ticked every second. But in this video, we're going to learn about commands, which instead of waiting for messages to come into us, commands are going to allow us to send messages after we do some type of effect or some cool thing that isn't just updating the state of our app. So let's take a look at what we've got going on here. We ended with probably the craziest program ever, which is a timer that is based on the window height, which makes no sense at all. So I'm gonna make myself tiny, and we're gonna go over here and we're gonna just get rid of that. That last thing doesn't make any sense, and we can get rid of this resize window noise. So I'm gonna save that. You have a timer, it starts and it stops. Cool. So I'm going to install a new package that I think is going to be a good introduction to dealing with commands, elm/random. So it's going to ask if we can add elm random, and I'm going to say yes, because I want it. I want it bad. Okay, so we should be back. Okay, everything's working. So commands are, there's basically two things that you might need to do in any program that you write, whether this is like React or Vue or Svelte or Elm. And those two things you can kind of think of as updating the state of something or everything else. So if you need to do something that isn't as simple as updating a property on your model, is probably a command that you want to do. So that includes like web requests. What's weird in Elm is in JavaScript, if we want to get a random number, we can just call math.random. It's a pretty straightforward relationship. If we want to get a random number from 1 to 10, we have to like call parse int on math.random, multiply that by 10. This gives us 0 to 9, I think. So we want to do this. So every time I call this function with the same arguments, I get a different answer because it's totally random. In Elm, functions can't do that. Functions can't perform some type of effect that is going to be inconsistent each time. But what they can do, let me exit this because it's a little bit out of date. What we can do is we can make commands that generate random numbers for us. So here, when I call random.generate, we're able to have something that takes in some value a. Well, we'll get more specific about this later. We give it a generator, and then it's going to give us a command, and that command is going to be handed to Elm. Elm is going to do the random dice roll, and it's going to call us back. And that way, we don't have any unpredictability. Our functions are still really easy to test. There's no randomness. There's no mocking that needs to happen. We're just going to focus on writing a generator that generates the values we care about, and then we're going to hand that over to Elm and be like, hey, Elm, you do it. You generate the crazy random number stuff, and then just call me back when you get that random number. So it's kind of a very different way to generate random numbers. This threw me off when I was learning the language, so we're just going to kind of play around with it here in the terminal, and then we're going to add it to our program, and hopefully that makes sense. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say random.int. So the way you can make generators in Elm is you can say random.int. You can use this thing random.uniform. There's a bunch of different ways to make generators. So if I wanted something that generated a random number, like a dice roll from 1 to 6, I would say I want a random int from 1 to 6. And this is going to give me a generator for integers. And when I pass, that over to the random.generate function, it's going to be able to take in this generator. We're going to pass that in as the second argument. And because a is now an int, all I have to do is give it a message that is expecting an int, and then it's going to create a command for me. So let's do that. Let's grab random.int, and let's go back to our code. So I'm going to, let's say we roll the dice on some random thing. So we can say roll equals nothing. And then what we'll do is add a roll property, roll int. I'm going to save, this is going to be a maybe int, right? Because at the beginning, we don't have the dice roll. So we're going to use a maybe to say when the app starts up, we don't have a value here. But when I run the random.generate, function, we should be able to set it. So random.generate, we are going to give it a message. So got dice or rolled dice. I don't know, I'll say rolled dice. Or we could say generated number. How about that? So we're gonna give random.generate. We're gonna call it with a message. And you know what? I'm gonna move this into its own function, which is gonna be called D6 generator. D6 is a nerdy term. When you play D&D, all the dice have little cute nicknames. So a 6-sided die is a D6, a 20-sided die is a D20. That's probably the popular one that you might have heard in the nerd culture. Always switching between languages, and every now and then it shows. So what this is this is a random generator of ints. And this is, we're going to call the random.generate function, and we're going to import random. Otherwise, we're going to have a bad time. So if I save this, it's going to be upset because it doesn't know what generated number is. But generated number is something that expects an int and will create a message. So all we're going to do is we're going to say, call generated number when you're done doing the random generation stuff for me. So this creates a command. This describes what kind of random number I want. This is the type of random number that I generated, and that's when I pass it to generate, it's going to provide me that value here, and I can do something with it in my update function. So this is going to be the rolled value that I got. So we can say model is going to be roll, and then since roll is a maybe int, we're going to use the just constructor to say roll equals just value. And that's going to convert this rolled value int into a maybe int. And so when I refresh, actually, we're not actually showing the thing anywhere. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just use that debug.toString to just quickly show you on the web page, or in a web page, you know, what the current state of things are. Debug.toString. Again, this won't work in like a production app. We're going to need to actually decide what we want to show in the nothing case. But this will be great for just showing that every time I refresh, we're getting a random number from 1 to 6. So I'm hitting refresh. And what we can do is we can just add like a, clicked reroll button. Reroll. And then, like we said, there's two types of things. There's updating our state, and then there's doing some type of effect. In this case, when we click reroll, we don't have the number to update the roll with yet, but we do want to fire off another generate command and tell it to call us back at generated number, and then we give it the generator that we want. So we want to do the D6 generator again. So it's just like what we typed here. We're going to do the exact same thing. If we want, we could even take this and move it into a function called send roll dice command. Send roll dice command. I don't know if I typed command like a normal person. I didn't. Okay. I used the shortened version. Just checking. And this is just a command message. So sometimes it's helpful for me to annotate these so that I'm keeping track of, or letting Elm know that I expect it to return a command message, or, it can tell me if I forget an argument or something like that. And that makes it easier for me to work with. Clicked reroll. Oh, it doesn't know what clicked reroll is because we didn't add that in. So I'm going to just add that to our list of events that can happen. I'm going to copy this reset button. And I'm just going to move this dice stuff underneath all the timer stuff. It'll make it a little bit easier to deal with. So we're just going to replace our set with roll. That was the most hackery way I could rename that variable. And so when I click this, you'll see that it is regenerating that number. And if we use Elm make with our if we make this program and we use the debug, it's going to be a little bit easier to see what's happening under the hood. So what you'll see is this is our debugger. I'm going to zoom in here. And when our program starts up, it is calling generated number and it's passing the value 6. And so when that happens, let me make this even bigger. That's a little crazy, but let's make this really big, put it over here, and then we're going to have this over here. And I'm going to make it look like this. That way we can see everything all at once. So when I click start, that's going to fire the timer went off every second. So you'll see that it's logging 7, 8. When I click stop, all of a sudden those messages stop. I got the click stop message, clicked reset, that fired the reset event. And then as I click reroll, what's happening is we're getting a clicked reroll event and we're getting the generated number. So we're getting 2 messages every time I click that button. The first message is us getting the click event, and then the second message is us getting the generated number back from the Elm runtime. So every time I click it, there's going to be 2 messages that fire off, and it's easier to see if you look at the bottom right here. When I click reset, it's just 1 message, so I'll get it to an even 30. When I click reroll, you're going to see it go 31, 32. So it happens so fast that it just says 32. So there's going to be 2 messages that happen with every dice roll. So even when it doesn't change, that's it just re-rolling the same result to make me look like my program's not working. But it's working, it's working. So that's commands. If we want, we can make it so that when our app starts up, we don't send that first dice roll. So if we wanted to do that, we could say command.none. And then what you'll see is, oops, we have to recompile here. What you'll see is we have nothing for our roll in the beginning and no messages have been fired. And so that's because we've initialized the roll to nothing. And it's only until a user clicks the reroll button that we actually fire off that send roll dice command. And then the generated number comes through. So when I click this, that's when it initializes the value. And that's why we use the maybe in the beginning, because there's a possible situation where the app loaded for the first time, we don't actually have a roll. We could, make this like some garbage number, say like -1, when the app starts up. But I thought it would be easier to think about if we just used a maybe to say, sometimes we have a dice roll and sometimes we don't. It depends what part of our program we're at. So yeah, that's it. If we wanted to do multiple effects at once, just like sub.batch, there is a command.batch. So we could fire off like a bunch of dice rolls. This is actually a horrible thing to do because whichever one randomly comes last is going to be the one that goes. But if you take a look here, you're going to see 3 commands get fired off every time I refresh the page. And that's us using command.batch to generate random numbers every time. So that was weird that it was 1, 2, 3, but they all random. Why 3, 4, 5? What the heck? Is it always going to do this? 5, 4, 6. Okay, that was really weird. Okay, that's captured in video. The first time it generated 1, 2, and 3. The second time it generated 3, 4, and 5, and it almost did 4, 5, and 6. That was freaky. I was like, that can't be good. Anyway, that's it. That is browser.element, working with subscriptions commands. Hopefully that gave you a basic understanding of kind of how they work. There's no HTTP or JSON stuff that's going to be covered in this course. Next, we're going to focus on how we can use commands and subscriptions to communicate with JavaScript, which is kind of like one of the other interesting things to wrap your head around. Took me a little bit of time, but we're going to learn about flags, ports, all that good stuff. That's going to be in the next video, and I'll see you then.